Daryl Recommends Podcast is a podcast recommending series and shouldn't be mistaken as a reviewing one. Opinions about each show are my own and should not reflect what each podcast has to offer. Content warnings aside, I believe if any recommendation in my series interests you, you should give it a chance, regardless of how I personally feel about the show.
Welcome to the pilot episode of Screen Tones, a webcomic podcast. My name is Crispy, I use she, they pronouns, and I make Ghost Junk Sickness.
I'm Verathane, and I work on the webcomic Witchwood.
I'm Rennie. I work on the webcomic Cape Blast, and I use she, her pronouns.
And I'm Ray. I work on the comic Overlord of Ravenfell and on Empyrean High.
So today, and tonight, only tonight, is going to be our first unofficial podcast that we're going to attempt to have fun with. And we're going to talk about influences tonight. It's going to be real. Like, we're going
to start a webcomic? Well, you should. And here is the place to figure out how to do exactly that. Different webcomic artists on Screen Tones will discuss various topics, from starting a comic to printing it, and everything else in between. Find everything here to start your own webcomic today. Screen Tones is a podcast about webcomic creators, talking about different parts of making a webcomic. They invite other artists, from publishers to other webcomic artists to even stock artists such as the Dorkastock, to come on and talk about the comic making process and just drawing and art in general. So this is a show that's been on my radar for some years now. I first followed them, I think, a little bit after they had started. I don't remember exactly how I found them. I know it was like somewhere on Twitter. I think it's maybe somebody I was following who does webcomics retweeted from them. And when I first saw it, I bookmarked it because there was only a couple episodes, and when I do listen to podcasts, I like there to be a lot of episodes before I start listening to it. And I eventually started it earlier this year, and I like it. It has a lot of really good sources, and everybody on it is a webcomic veteran. A lot of the comics that are made by the people on there have been running for roughly around 10 years about. So these people have some advice, and they are sharing it with everybody. And I just think this podcast is very cool in general. And I just like listening to people talk about podcasts, and they got some like really good like advice on things. And like they'll cover topics such as like what art programs and like hooks and like starting a story. But then they'll also talk about other things that maybe you probably never considered before when starting a webcomic, such as like looking at the numbers to seeing how many people have like read your webcomic, or like web design, or things such as like aesthetics and coming up with character names. And they also discuss topics that have come up like socially when it comes to art, such as like Twitter dying off the face of the earth and Gen AI and things like that. So if you want a podcast where it talks about anything and everything comics, but also ties it into like relatable art stuff, even if you yourself are not currently a webcomic artist or don't plan to be, then I feel like this is a really good show to just get like stuff like that down. And I think it's cool because you got a large group of hosts. I'm not gonna name every single host on it, just mostly because I am bad with names, and I even though there's like about like 30, maybe more episodes, I'm going to say 30 because that feels like a safe enough number. I bet there's like 50 episodes on. The one nice thing this too is that there is a wide range of hosts, so all of them are webcomic creators. There's Crispy, who is one of the creators of Ghost Junk Sickness. There is Star, who is the creator of Cast Off. There is Claire, who also goes by Clam, who makes Phantom Marine, and many more other different creators of webcomics on this. And they also invite different other people to just like, you know, come on and talk about different topics. So it isn't just with the hosts on the show. They also invited other creators who also talk a little bit about the webcomics that they create, which I think is really neat. Because, like, it's one thing if it's, like, one person talking about webcomics, but having, like, a wide range of people with different experiences in regards to making a webcomic is very cool because it gives you different perspectives, and you could generally pick and choose, like, which advice works for you and which doesn't. And I find that very, very helpful. So if you're somebody who is trying to start a webcomic and you really want to start a webcomic, then I definitely recommend this show as like one of the ones to go look out for as a resource. There's tons of different webcomic making resources out here, and I find that this one is one of the really good ones, just because one, it's a podcast that's still currently updating, but two, they just cover like so many different topics. Like the last episode that came out that I listened to, because the new one actually came out the day I'm recording this, was the one I mentioned earlier about them talking with the Dorkastock with drawing photo references. But the one before that was coming up with names and like also different like formats. So even like they explored the idea of like maybe your story doesn't need to be a webcomic if the webcomic format doesn't suit their storytelling needs. And like, yeah, some stories are best told in certain different stuff. Some need to be more visual, some may be more audio related, and some can be easily just like written out like a novel. And so like it's one of those cool topics that is nice to bring up because like, you know, it makes you think about your own work and how you want to present it to people. Though I do want them to do a story Bible episode because at least for me personally, that was like what finally kickstarted me to doing a I wanted to do a webcomic, which, you know, I never shut up about my webcomic, but if you don't know, it's in Harmony. But I didn't really know how to start, and so like what I started with was a story Bible, and that actually like put together so many things so nicely for me when I started my webcomic. And so like I think like that would be like one of those cool topics to like bring up, is talking about making a story Bible and organizing your lore and things like that. But yeah, no, so this is a like talk show host kind of show. You don't have to worry about like anything from like some of the stuff that I usually recommend in my podcast, like horror related things and things that I'm like, okay, so by the way, I just need you to know that there's a guy whose eyeballs fell out of his face or whatever. Like maybe they'll talk about like some stuff that I don't know about individual people's like personal like icks or not. But like, you know, if you're worried about anything content warning wise, it's a podcast where they're talking about webcomics. I will be really surprised if there is something like that in there. But yeah, overall, this is a great webcomic making resource. I definitely recommend it, and also because everybody on there is a webcomic artist, it gives you a whole list of webcomics to read. I know I added a bunch of these to my list because I like finding new stuff to read, even if I am slow starting them. Like I said, I knew about this podcast for years. I didn't listen to it until like around the time I came back from Vegas, actually. So there you go. Anyway, I am going to link all of the websites that are relevant for this. They have a YouTube. I'm going to link that as well because I know they're trying to get more followers on it. And so if you want to listen to Screen Tones, you don't like Spotify because Spotify also sucks. Unfortunately, I still use it because none of the other options available are really have the same convenience that Spotify has. But if you don't like Spotify and you want to listen on something that's different, you should try out their YouTube because they do have a YouTube channel and I'm very much subscribed to it. So yeah, I can tell you it's a good YouTube channel. And they also have a Patreon now, so I will be linking to that as well, and a website. So I will link all of those. I think you know at this point that I link websites relevant to the shows that I'm recommending. I hope you guys will go check it out. If you want to start a webcomic, then here's where to start. Go and do it. And I hope you have a good one. Bye!